Greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that His presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. As we continue on with Jesus, He's been having dinner at Levi's house, lots of sinners and tax collectors there. The Pharisees, they were grumbling about why He eats with them, and Jesus tells them He's come to call the sinners, not the righteous, that it's the sick who need the doctor. And more questions follow. And so we pick it up at Mark chapter 2 and verse 18. Questions about fasting. So now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. Some people came and asked Jesus, how is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not? Now let me pause there for a moment and talk about fasting. That fasting at its best, done properly, was a way to humble yourself, a way to repent from the world, a way to repent from sins, a way to seek God first. And so it was a sign that you're really seeking God, helping yourself to realize that it's not the worldly things that save you, it's not food that is the source of life, but it's really a way to humble yourself and to seek God. Done at its worst, it was a way simply to show people that you were religious. It was a way to gain attention for being religious and for seeking God. And so done right, you're truly seeking God and humbling yourself and repentant before God. Done wrong, you're actually kind of boasting and becoming arrogant about, look how religious I am. Look at how I seek God. But the disciples were not fasting at all. And so the question came to Jesus, how is it that John's disciples are fasting, the Pharisees are fasting, and yet your disciples aren't fasting at all? Well, here's Jesus' response. Verse 19, Jesus answered, how can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? They cannot so long as they have him with them, but the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast. And so, the point of fasting, especially during the time of Jesus, was to cry out to God to send the Messiah, to bring salvation. And Jesus is saying, how can the disciples fast? How can they cry out for God to send the Messiah, salvation, when the answer to their prayer is right with them? That would just be foolish. See, the disciples were recognizing, maybe not to the full extent, but they were recognizing that God was at work in their midst in Jesus. And so there was no need to fast for God to work. God was working. And there was no need to fast for God to send the Messiah. They haven't put it together yet, but the Messiah is with them. And so it's not a time for fasting. It's actually a time for celebrating and a time for recognizing that God has heard their prayers, that God is present, that God is saving in and through Jesus. And so that becomes the lesson. And Jesus says there's a time when they're going to fast, a time when the bridegroom, a time when Jesus himself will be taken up from them. And at that point, they'll fast and they'll grieve. But right now, that's not the time. Jesus goes on and he talks about this new time. And so let me go ahead and continue. Verse 21, no one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. If they do, the new piece will pull away from the old, making the tear worse. And the people do not pour new wine into old wineskins. If they do, the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins. And so just thinking a little bit more about this in terms of, you don't take an unshrunk piece of cloth and sew it onto old clothing, an old pair of jeans where you have a rip, because that new cloth is going to shrink and you'll have a worse tear. New wine into old wineskins. That new wine is going to ferment, going to give off gas, it's going to burst the skins, both will be ruined. New wine requires new skins. And so with these illustrations, we see, one, that you're not going to fast when Jesus is present. It just doesn't fit. Same thing in terms of the cloth, same things in terms of the wine. Just makes no sense. But maybe even more so is recognizing that God has done something new in Jesus, that God has heard prayers, that God has come, that God has saved in and through Jesus. And so we don't fast, to be saved in a sense, because salvation has come in Jesus. We may fast for God to, extend the reign of Jesus, the rule of Jesus into a new area in our lives, into somebody else's life. But essentially, we recognize that God has saved us in and through Jesus. Important to recognize, fasting does not save us. Jesus saves us. And fasting may be a way for us to recognize Jesus, you're the one we truly hunger for, but we're always recognizing that our salvation is in Jesus. And so wherever you find yourself scattered today, we can kind of place ourselves back in the story and see how they're missing it. They don't recognize that God saves in Jesus, and so it's not a time to fast. We need to recognize that God does save in Jesus, and so this reality of salvation in Jesus should kind of dictate how we go about life, how we go about religious practices, how we even go about fasting. We might not fast, we might fast, but our fasting is always informed by the truth that it's in Jesus that God saves. And that salvation has been accomplished, and that salvation is being accomplished ever more fully. And so we would fast in anticipation for the return of Christ. I know this one's gotten a little bit long, my apologies for that, but kind of a complex subject in terms of fasting. God bless. Have a great day.